Hello, my name is Julia. Today we're going to be painting this fun little Color Sunday painting. So I am from Colorado and this painting is based on this day up on the Mesa, which is a place in Colorado. They do Color Sunday and it's usually around the end of September, and it's where all the aspen trees are changing colors, and it's absolutely gorgeous, reds and yellows and greens, and everyone goes up there to ride the ski lift and take pictures. So it's just really, really beautiful scenery. So this is based on that. This is a painting for absolute beginners. You don't need any experience whatsoever. It's very easy. We are painting in acrylic paints. Today I am using Blickrylics, but feel free to use whatever acrylic paints that you may have. And we're going to be learning some really easy techniques today. So just a little bit of a gradient for a sky, some really easy, simple mountains that you can do that look kind of realistic without a lot of effort or a lot of detail, and then just kind of a fuzzy background, and then just learning some fun little aspen tree techniques. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So today we have an 11 by 14 canvas. The brushes we're going to use are going to be a size 12 bristle brush, a 1-inch flat brush, a 1/2-inch flat brush, a size 3 round brush, and a size 0 round brush. The colors we're going to be using today are fluorescent blue, white, phthalo blue, fluorescent violet, deep yellow, fire red, phthalo green, and a little bit of black. All right, so let's get started. We're first going to take our size 12 bristle brush. You're gonna wanna dip that in your water and then squeeze out any extra water. Dab it on your paper towel. We really don't want it to be too wet. And we are going to start off with straight fluorescent blue paint. So you just want a lighter blue, like a cerulean blue. And we're gonna take that to the top of our canvas, and we're gonna do horizontal brush strokes. So we're starting off with the sky here. If you wanna paint your edges as you go, you can. And you can use your 1-inch flat brush for this, but it's just not gonna dry as quickly. So it's kind of up to you. So I'm gonna go down about 3 inches here. And then I'm not going to clean my brush out, but I am going to wipe it off so that I barely have any paint left on my brush. And from there, I'm gonna take white. So just take a big scoop of white, and I'm gonna go down about 3 more inches. And I'm gonna start right there. And so just that teeny bit of blue that's left in your brush is gonna blend in with the white. And then you can carry that up. Notice I'm doing long brush strokes, so I'm starting on one end of the canvas and going all the way to the other one. And right now we have half dark blue, half light blue. We want to bring those together for our gradient. So you're going to brush up into your dark blue and then back down into your light blue. And it is a sky, so it can definitely have some variation. It doesn't need to be super smooth unless that's what you want. And once you get it in there, if you want to paint your edges, you can wrap that paint right around the sides and then drop that brush off in your water. If you did want it to have a smooth look, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that in case you wanted to. You can use your 1-inch flat and you can very lightly just brush over it. So the bristle brush is good if you're trying not to use too much paint, but it does give kind of like a scratchy textured look. And if you want it to be more smooth, then the 1-inch flat is great for that. So I'm just very, very lightly brushing over what we already have here. And I'm gonna add just a little bit extra blue up here at the top. So if I go straight at the canvas with my brush perpendicular, I can dig the paint off. But if I very lightly just glide along the top. I can lay it on a lot more thickly. And there's our sky. So when you're finished with that, you can go ahead, and we're going to use actually the 1-inch flat here to just kind of create a horizon line. So you can take your blue paint. So we are going to have our sky, and then we're going to have our mountains, and then we're going to have kind of some green and tree colors down here in the bottom that are also going to be kind of hills leading up to the mountains. So you kind of have to decide where your mountains are going to go next. So this brush can be used in 2 ways. We were using the flat part. You can also use the edge though to make a thin line to outline something. So we're going to use the edge now. And you first want to pick where your main mountain peak is going to be. So one of the keys to mountains is to not make them super tall and pointy. So they're triangles, but they're very wide triangles, okay? So we are going to go to the left side of our canvas. You can go up from when your sky ends there about 1 inch. And I'm going to make mine off center. So mine's going to go a little bit to the left. So I'm going to use the edge of my brush, kind of come up to a point here. And then I'm going to have it dip back down. Then I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to start on this same line that I just made and do a line up and a line down. And you can have them shorter on the sides if you want, or you can have them a little bit taller. I'm going to have just half of one over here. So it's just going to go off the edge of the canvas there. And then you want to go ahead and decide where your mountains are going to end. So I'm going to have mine end, I think about right here. So it's about halfway on the canvas. And that's where my little hilly area is going to start. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to drop that brush off in our water. And we're going to grab our size 12 bristle brush. Clean that out in your water, squeeze out any extra paint. Dab it on your paper towel. We want to get it nice and dry. And the next thing we're going to do is start filling in this area down here, because we do want to give it time to dry so we can paint the aspen trees over it. So we're going to start off with just our yellow paint. And instead of dragging our brush like we did before, we're going to use it more like a stamp. But first we're going to drag it just to see where our paint is going to go. So first we're going to have a piece that's going to go down here. So you can add some yellow down there. And we're going to kind of keep zigzagging side to side. Now I'm going to go to my bottom right corner. I'm going to go up a couple inches and add some of that in. Go to the left side, go up a little bit from there. And so it's meeting in the middle, but it's not really going too far past it. And then up a little bit. And I'm going to go over here on the right. Okay, so now that you've got it blocked in, if you want to stamp over it to create more texture, you can. And after you get that in there, the next thing we're going to do, wipe our brush off on the side, and we're going to take red, straight red here. And we are going to go along the tops. So I'm going to go and just add a stripe to the top of that, stripe to the top of that. And then same thing, you're going to stamp over it. So you can make different marks depending on how you stamp. So if you very lightly tap, that's going to make one look. And if you press down really hard, that's going to make another look. So I'm just stamping first across the top. And then I'm going to start to carry it down into the yellow a little bit, and I'm lightly tapping, and I'm moving my brush around a little bit so that it doesn't kind of all go in a straight line. And you can also have some where it kind of dips down, dips up. So now it's time to kind of mess it up a little bit. Okay, so if you want, you can add just a little bit more red. If it got, we want orange, but if it got really orange and you lost any kind of pure red that you had, you can go in again with a little bit more red. And now I'm going to wipe my brush off on the side. I'm not going to clean it out. And now we're going to get in there with some phthalo green. So look what would happen if we just use straight phthalo green. It would be this kind of aqua color and very translucent, which if you want to go for like a more whimsical look, then you can do that. But I want mine a lot darker than that. Two colors that are great to mix together, of course, are red and green, and that's going to make it more neutral. So I'll show you what that kind of looks like. It can even get pretty dark, and that's going to be more of kind of a foresty green. But I'm even going to go so far as to add some black in there, okay? So basically I'm going to take red, green, and some black, and I'm going to mix those together. And I'm just going to start filling this in. So you can either stamp it all in, or if you want to just kind of actually fill it in first and then stamp, you can do that. And then if you want to go in and make any areas like a little bit darker, you could add a little extra paint. And now it's time to mess it up a little bit like we did before. So you can have it kind of go up a little bit higher in some instances, down a little bit lower. And now I'm going to wipe my brush off on the side, and I'm going to kind of scrub it in a circle, get it nice and fanned out. And now I'm just going to do a little bit of blending, not a ton, but I'm lightly stamping over in some areas where the green area meets these lighter yellow, brighter areas. Just to blur it out a little bit more. And then I'm just going to make it just a little bit darker. So I'm adding just some black down here. darken it up a little bit. And that looks good. So now we're going to wipe our brush to keep our water clean, and then drop that in your water, and you're going to get out your 1-inch flat brush. So we're now going to be using the flat side of our brush. And we're going to start filling in these mountains. So you could really do any colors you wanted to. If you wanted more brown mountains, you could go that direction. I'm going to start off with just some phthalo blue here. And my brush strokes are going to start on the left slanted line, and they're going to go down towards the right. Okay, so we're going to start filling these in. And here's the key to making mountains look realistic without really getting into it, is you want to have just a little wobble. Maybe it wobbles up, then back down, then back up again. You don't want it to look like wavy, but very subtle kind of turns of your brush. And for this, I like short brush strokes because I want it to look like it has a lot of texture to it. So I always do lots of short brush strokes with mountains. And you can get right up down to that edge. And if there's any green paint that's still wet, that's fine. Just carry it up. Okay, so with this blue, if you lay it on really thick, it's going to make some darker areas. So if I very lightly brush, my handle's close, I'll get really dark areas. Again, if I'm perpendicular, then I'll dig the paint off. So you can kind of control how dark you want it to get. Now, if you wanted to make it more neutral, you could add a teeny bit of red, and you could either mix it on the side first, or you could just go and start adding in a little teeny bit of red. And the more you brush over it, the more it's going to kind of blend in. Too, if you want to go more vibrant, that's why I threw in a little bit of this fluorescent purple. Because it's just kind of a fun color, especially with this blue. I just love the way it looks. It's not realistic by any means. So if you're going for realism, this is not the direction you want to go. But I just love the way those two colors look together. Now I'll add a little bit of red in there. I'm going to darken up this bottom area using that red. And now I'm going to take straight blue, straight red, mix this together to make sure I get a really nice dark tone. And I'm just going to darken up the left side of each peak. So I get a really dark edge over there. Same thing here. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to wipe our brush off, clean it out. And now we're going to start adding in a little bit of snow. So if you want to outline it first, sometimes people feel more comfortable doing that if they haven't painted mountains before. You could use your little detail brush and you can take white paint and basically you're just dividing the mountain up. So you can use the edge of your brush to do a very messed up zigzag. So maybe it kind of goes to the right, then it goes really far to the left, and then back down to the right, maybe less, and then kind of coming down. So just a really messed up zigzag, and you can go off of that if you feel more comfortable. You definitely don't have to have that, but if you haven't done this a lot, you might feel more comfortable. You can also use your smaller flat brush. I'm going to show you first with just my 1-inch flat here. So I'm just going to grab white paint, and quite a bit of it. And the key is to not just press your whole brush down and go for it. It's like you very, very want to lightly, barely touch the canvas. So my brush, we're brushing down now the same direction we were before, but we're only doing it on 1/2 of each mountain peak. Okay, so I'm going to start up here, and I'm very lightly going to drag my brush down. And notice how I'm not touching the whole brush down. If I touch the whole brush down, I'm just going to get one big solid brush stroke, but I'm kind of lifting it. And practice this on the side. You're basically trying to make really kind of messy marks. So I'll show you again on this one. And it's going to blend in with your wet blue paint, and that's okay, that's what you're going for. And I'm going to grab some more white. Do that last one. And now I've got to work down this mountain a little bit more. Barely, barely touching the canvas. Very, very messy marks. And then if you want to add some just short brush strokes elsewhere, you can. I'm going to wipe my brush off so I barely have any here. Add just a couple marks over in the dark area over here, just for some variation. And then just get it to where you like it. So what I'm noticing here is these three look a little too similar. I did the exact same kind of mark on each of them, so I want to mess that up a little bit. So I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to change it a little bit. So I'll do this one. Maybe I'll add a little bit extra to the top of this one. So it's a really simple technique. Up close, you're probably going to think, okay, that looks like kind of messy paint, but from far away, it can have the appearance like mountains. Okay. So at this point, you do want the background a little bit dry before you come in with your aspen trees. So you can paint your edges and wait for that to dry for a little bit. Okay, so now that it's dried a little bit, we're going to take our 1/2-inch flat brush, go ahead and dip that in your water, and it's time to start on our aspen trees. So you can use either of these brushes, your 1/2-inch flat or your pointed round brush. I'm going to start off with just my 1/2-inch flat, and I'm going to show you a couple times. So I'm grabbing the white paint and I'm loading it up, meaning I'm brushing back and forth on both sides of my brush. And then I'm going to pick somewhere where I want my aspen tree to go. So you want to keep in mind, you can use the flat side of your brush to make a thick line. You can use the edge to make a thin line, but if you press down really hard while using the edge, you'll make a very fat line anyways. So you want to keep in mind how much pressure you're applying. And you can practice this on the side first, or if you want to, you can go straight onto the canvas. So I'm going to start off using the flat side of my brush. I'm going to go in about 1 inch or 2 from the right here. And I'm going to start off using the flat side of my brush. And as I go up, I'm going to turn my brush sideways so that it's going to get skinnier and skinnier as it goes up. So I'll show you again. Starting at the bottom, I'm using the flat side of my brush, and then I'm turning it sideways to use the edge so it gets thinner and thinner. So now I'll show you with the pointed brush. And do another little one right here. So go over a couple inches, and I'm pressing down hard. And then as I go up, I'm just going to have it get thinner and thinner, and I'm going to go into either the left or to the right. So the next thing we're going to do is add on a little bit of a shadow. So first you can pick how many trees you want. So I'll have another big one over here, almost to the edge of the canvas. And I'm not going to have it go up quite as high as the other one. And you may still pick up some wet paint, and that's okay. I'm going to use just the edge of my brush to make a thinner one right here. And a much thinner one. Okay, so now to add on a shadow, you want to have lots of white paint on one side of the brush, and then you want to dip one corner of your brush in black. Now whichever side you put that black on is going to be your shadow side. So I'm going to put it on my right here. And if you have a lot of thick paint, it's going to blend in more. So if you want it more blended than that, you can of course just kind of keep going over it. You can even just use water and go over it. If you want it even darker, you can grab black and go over it again. So it's like the mountains in that you want to kind of very slightly wiggle your brush at times, just to get some nice texture in there. And also you want your handle to be close to the canvas. So same thing over here. So I can either flip it and do the shadow on the other side, or I can have the shadow on the same side for all of them. And now if I have these smaller brushes, you can either, or smaller trees, you can either use the edge of your brush and just paint kind of a dark shadow up it, like that. Or you can switch to your other brush and do the same thing. When you brush back and forth with the pointed brush, even though it's pointed, you can still get kind of two sides to it. So dip in one side with white, dip in the other side with black. And go up the tree. You could also use this brush if you wanted to blend in the edge between. If I wanted to smooth it out, I could line it up so it's half on the black, half on the white. And just blend it in a little bit more. And even use short brush strokes. And now I'm going to start adding on branches. So with branches, you could also use either brush. You can use the edge of your 1/2 inch flat. And branches are just like the letter Y. So I'm going to go down about halfway on my tree here. And I'm going to have my branch reach up to the left, and I'm wiggling it just slightly. And then I can go down a little bit from there and do another one. So I've created a Y, now I can do Ys on those. And you can kind of keep going on, adding on as many Ys as you'd like. Now if you want to use your pointed round, just want to be careful how much pressure you're applying. And it seems like with aspen trees, all of the branches are pretty close to the top. They're kind of top heavy. And you can do it in just white. Another trick I like to do sometimes is I like to dip my brush in white and black at the same time. And then it'll kind of shade the branches as I go. So I'll show you that over here. So I'll just give them a little bit of dimension. And some of them may end up turning more one color than the other, and that's totally fine. And you want to keep in mind, branches do grow all the way around a tree. They don't just sprout out from the sides. So that's why it's important to start some of your branches from the middle of your tree trunk. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is just go add in some little teeny branches. So barely touching. And notice how the branches go upwards. If you have them go downwards, the trees will have like a sad feel to them. So that's good if that's what you're going for. But I'm going for happy little trees today. Okay, so now we have our branches and our trees sketched in there. And now we're going to add the little details that you see on aspen trees. So you can do just horizontal lines with black paint. And you can have them go straight across and keep them really random, some big, some small, some next to each other in little groups, some off on their own, some short, some long. And if you want to, you could also have them dip down just slightly. And your paint is still going to be wet, and that's perfect. It's going to blend in even more. And sometimes less is more. So if you're not sure when to stop with your little details, take a step back, look at it from far away, or take a picture on your phone, something to give you a new perspective on what it looks like. Because when you paint for a while, then you kind of start to lose sight of what is really going on. And if you're trying to get a thinner line, you can spin your brush in a circle just to redefine that point. And the other detail you can add on are spots. Maybe a big spot, little spot, and the key is just to make them messy. Just gonna wiggle your brush around, give those marks that you make character so that they don't look like just polka dots. Same thing, lots of variation, small, big, some in groups, some on their own. And then the last thing you can do is eyes. So sometimes on aspen trees, there's those things that look like eyes. So you can do a messy little mark and then you can drape a line across the top of it. Not all of your little marks have to have that. Make sure you have some that are coming off the edge of the tree. And you can also do some dots where you dip in white and black at the same time. And this isn't a super realistic painting, so you don't need to get too into it. I'm going to bring out this little tree just a little bit. It's looking a little, just a tidbit dull. You probably wouldn't be able to see a whole lot of detail on your trees with this sort of perspective, but if you wanted to make the eye on the aspen tree stand out even more, you could drape white across the top of the black, and then you can even blend it. But it definitely doesn't need that. I'm just kind of showing you something a little extra. And there would be shadows underneath your branches. So once you get to a point where you're happy with your aspen trees, you can switch to your bristle brush. So clean it out in your water, squeeze the excess water out. And I'm going to get it really, really dry. And now I'm going to be adding leaves to these aspen trees. So I'm stamping in the yellow. So if I use just straight yellow to stamp my leaves, you're going to be able to see through it because the paint's kind of translucent. And so it's going to appear kind of green. That's definitely okay. It's not like leaves are going to be like straight yellow. But if you want to have them more opaque, then you'd want to mix a little bit of white in with your yellow, and that's going to make it more opaque so that you can't see through it. And notice with the stamping, I'm very, very lightly tapping my brush. So not pressing down it hard at all. And that's going to give me a nice kind of leafy texture. And in some areas, you do want it to go in front. Like there's some little clusters that go in front of the branches. And in some of them, you want to kind of stick to the edges. So you could have just yellow leaves. I'm going to do yellow and red. So now I'm going to start getting into more just plain yellow. And I'm going to go along the tops with that. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, I don't want a lot of white to mix with my red. So the more opaque yellow that we made, I don't want that to mix with my red because then I'll get kind of a peach color. I'm not really going for that. So now I'm going to take my brush and I am going to dip just one side in yellow, but I'm going to dip the top part in red. So I get half red, half yellow. And now I'm going to start to stamp in kind of circular motions so that I get these kind of clusters. And you want to layer them, so some will be more on top. So you can start in whatever is going to be the back. So I'll start up here. And if it starts getting too mixed up, then you can clean your brush out again. Just make sure that it's very, very dry. And again, some clusters are big, some are small. And this is definitely stylized. They don't really grow like this, but I just like the way that it looks. I like things to be a little organized, and this is how I organize my leaves in my imaginary paint world. And overlapping always helps, so see how I have this one kind of in the front here. And to have rough edges is going to make it look more realistic too. So if you have any like super clean edges, you can go in and add some globs of red paint just to mess it up a little bit. So you could even go back and do some more layers down here. And if you really like the way the clusters look, you could even create some kind of clusters down here. And so you might wonder, like, what are these things? Well, those are basically trees that are kind of hidden in between all of the other dark green trees, which in Colorado would be like pine trees. So I'm going to go through and just darken up some of this. Not all of it, but some of it where I can just see straight through it. I'm going to add one more little layer there with the red and the green mixed together. Especially back here in the back, because that'd be so far away, it'd be hard to see. And that is it. Thank you so much for painting with me today, and we'll see you next time.